Hi everyone, welcome to your training on the elements. The elements are one of the most foundational principles in Ayurveda. Once we learn this fundamental knowledge, you can apply it to pretty much everything in your life. That is how important it is. If the concept seems to be hard for you to grasp, don't worry. We're going to go deeper into it in one of our trainings. This is just to give you the backbone and the structure of it. And once we begin to learn how elements and the qualities and the doshas all work together, this builds the backbone of the intuitive template. So in Ayurveda, there are 5 elements, and this is similar to traditional Chinese medicine. They have 5 elements, however, they're just a little bit different than Ayurveda. And why this is an elemental science is because Ayurveda believes that we are nature. Nature is just a reflection of us. So if we can better understand the qualities in nature, we can really better understand ourselves, our bodies, our emotions, our spiritual tendencies, everything that is connected. It's also really important to understand the elements and learning how to bring our body into harmony. Part of the intuitive template is knowing when our body is out of balance, when we have excess or deficiency of one element, and being able to bring the opposite element into balance. We'll go into that way deeper today. So, what are the 5 elements? If you don't already have a notebook and a pen or typing this, I recommend to take notes. There are 5 elements in Ayurveda. Going from gross to subtle, we have earth, it's the heaviest, then water, fire, air, and ether. So I'm going to go into way detail into each of these. So the earth element, I want you to think of if you were just to dig your hands into wet, cold soil, like you're about to plant a new seed. When you dig your hands into that dirt, it's cold, it's heavy, it's moist, it's dense, and it's a little bit of rough against your skin. These are the qualities of the earth element. If you need to pause at any time just to write down everything that I'm saying, I highly recommend it. And it's important to understand what these qualities are when we're talking about the elements, because they are going to serve as the baseline qualities when we start talking about your body and your emotions and your spiritual body. So again, think of earth as that heavy and that dense and that cold but rough nature to it. Now for water. Water, think of the nearest local body of water that you have. And if you were just to kind of run your hands through that stream of water, it is cold, it's dense, it's heavy, it's moist, but it's smooth, it's flowing. It has more mobility than the earth element, but it still has that kind of density and that coolness to it. Now for the fire element. The fire element, fire is quick and it's really hot. So picture a campfire, and when you're looking at that campfire and that fire just kind of goes side to side, back and forth, and it transforms. It allows us to see with clarity as well, because the fire element begins to burn away all that is residue, burn away all that needs to be cleared so you can really get to the light, into the truth. That is what the fire element is about. So hot, sharp, clear, mobile are all characteristics of the fire element. Now for the air element. Air elements, we're getting more subtle, more lighter. Think of on a cold, windy day and that gust of wind just smacks you in the face. It's cold, it's rough, it is mobile, and it is light, and it's drying, right? In the wintertime, what happens is that we start to get drier skin because of the rougher and the drier temperatures that are outside and that coolness. Very much related to the air element. And then finally we have ether. Ether is the hardest one to understand because it's the one that we can't see, and it's the most subtle of all of them. The best way to describe ether is if you've ever sat in meditation before and you kind of hear that ringing in your ears, that is ether. It's that space, that connectedness that we feel when we're in practices like meditation. Ether is the space in between everything else. It's what connects everything together. Ether is light, it's dry, it's mobile, and it's rough. And even just a little bit lighter than the air element. So all of these elements, they live in nature. We can see it in nature, right? However, all these elements live within us as well. They live in our physiological system, in our body, the physical structure. They live within our emotions, and they live within our spiritual body, what we were destined to do in this lifetime. It is all connected. And this is the beauty of the Vedic sciences that you'll begin to learn, is that although the elements are such a key part in Ayurveda, they serve as the backbone for all of the other Vedic studies, such as Vedic astrology, right? Vedic astrology is based on planets, which is nature, and understanding the elements in your astrological chart, which is related to your Ayurvedic constitution. So let's just pump the brakes for a second and pause. There are 5 elements in nature, each with their own qualities, from heavy to the most subtle. It's earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Dive a little bit deeper on what these elements actually mean, and we're first just going to see it from the perspective of how they are in their purest form in nature. So let's talk about the earth element. The earth element is purest with trees and the ground, whether that's grass or sand or mountains. This is that earth that builds structure to the grounds in which we live in. So if you're wanting to connect with the earth element, I do recommend going out in nature, putting your feet, bare feet, on the ground, digging your toes in the sand or in the grass, even touching and hugging trees, one of my favorite tools to do, is great. And I want you to observe here, what is shifting? What qualities am I taking on from being around the earth element? You may notice that you're more grounded, that you feel stable, that you feel steadfast and structured and focused. That's what the earth element gives us. Now for the water element, the best way to connect with the water element is going to your nearest local body of water and maybe dipping your toes in if you can, if it's not too cold, and understanding what are the qualities that this element is trying to teach me. That the water just continues to adapt and ripple no matter where it is. If you see a stream and you study it, the water will always find a way to continuously flow and flow. The same thing in an ocean waves. They are just endless, and they are rippling, and they are constantly adapting to nature and what is in this present moment. So wise. If it is not accessible to go to your nearest local body of water, even just a bath ritual or taking a shower, it's about imbuing your intention with the water element. And just start to notice, what qualities am I taking on? Water, it's nourishing, it's soft, it's got this feminine nature to it because it really flows, it's adaptable, and it's also cleansing. How good do we feel after a long day? And maybe this is me personally. If I have a long day of being in a lot of people's energies and I go and take a shower or a bath, I feel like a new person after. It's so cleansing and healing. Now for the fire element. The best way is just to start a campfire or even just doing a fire ceremony. I love getting a non-flammable bowl and just writing intentions that I want to release, lighting it up and watching it burn down. So good. Even candle gazing is a great ritual, which we'll learn later on in the other modules. It's an ancient Ayurvedic technique. So fire burns, it purifies, and it transforms, right? It's transforming something into a different form. And that's what it does within us. If we're noticing that we need to transform a certain negative thought, a certain pattern, it's really helpful to have that destruction, almost like that phoenix rising from the ashes kind of mentality. So if you are wanting to connect with the fire element, first start to understand, how am I connecting with the qualities of the fire element and what is true for me? Then for the air element, to connect with the air element, it's really good to use music, something like chimes and bells. Really helps us to connect to that more subtle form of the air element. I also love just going outside and getting fresh air, feeling that breeze on my skin. It's so clearing because it has that quality of lightness to it. You know, when we're inside all day, especially if our jobs are requiring us to be inside, when you go outside and you just feel that breeze on your face, it just brings that lightness. It helps to clear. And that's very much my personal experience. So I would recommend to really study the elements of air with music and see what qualities emerge for yourself. Ether. My favorite way to connect with the ether element is to get out of nature with silence. So this is when I go on my hikes alone, or if I start to meditate in nature alone, and really getting to know what silence is and that stillness. And ether, it's the lightest and most subtle element, and it gives you a really unique connection with it. So my personal experience would be completely different than all of yours. So those are just some quick examples. If you're wanting to connect with the elements, I highly recommend just picking one that you feel intuitively drawn to and start to create a ritual around it. These are just ideas. I highly recommend suggesting what emerges for you. You may have already had those inklings of what you've been wanting to do, so go after that, and that is the best way you can get to know the elements. Okay, so now let's get into how the elements live within our bodies. Now we know how the elements live in nature. We know that this is the intuitive template that not only lays down the philosophy for Ayurveda, but every other Vedic science. So the best way we can also understand the elements is how they live within us. So we are a unique combination of all 5 elements. Yes, you definitely have some elements that are more predominant than others. However, you have all of them. So it's really important that we honor that each of us has all the elements within us. So you may be familiar with something called the doshas. Dosha actually equates to imbalance, because already we're seeing that when we have an imbalance in the elements, it creates a dosha. So by nature, we as humans, we're almost born to be out of balance, so that we have this wonderful journey to bring ourselves back into harmony. That is part of the beautiful part of the human experience. So what is a dosha actually? Well, we know that there's 3 doshas, and the doshas emerge from the 5 elements. So again, we go from gross to subtle. Earth and water, they connect together, and that equals kapha or kapha dosha. You can say it either way. Sometimes in Sanskrit, you'll notice that there's 2 variations to say the Sanskrit term, and this is often because Northern Indian and Southern Indian have different accents, and they have different ways of explaining things. Back to the elements, going from gross to subtle. So we have earth and water equals kapha, then we have fire and a little bit of water equals the Pitta Dosha, and then air and ether equals Vata Dosha. So let's start to understand what this actually means when the elements come together. So let's start with kapha, with earth and water. So we know that earth, it's grounding, it's steadfast, it's structured. We know that water is heavy, it's moist, and it's dense, and it's flowing. So how can we relate this to the physical body? Well, when I see someone who is predominantly made of kapha in their physical structure, I'm going to see strong bones. I'm going to see more stocky features that have kind of that earth-like element to them. I'm going to see curves, just like the water has these beautiful, smooth, round edges. I'm going to see really strong muscles and a little bit of softness in the tissue. You might see some padding around the shoulders. This is the kapha dosha, the beauty of the kapha dosha. Now, physiologically in the body, now we're going to be talking about when there is an imbalance. So when the body is out of balance with too much earth and too much water, what happens? Well, when we had too much earth to our body, that creates weight gain. That creates an excess on us. When we have too much of the water element within us, this can lead to edema, swelling of the body, maybe puffiness in the eyes, and excess water can also relate to mucus. So mucus can live in the respiratory system, and we'll see a lot of kaphas tending to have imbalances, always having runny noses, always having allergy issues, and that is because they have that excess mucus that's in their heart and their lungs and can go into their nasal cavities. Now, emotionally, how does the earth and the water element make up a kapha person? So earth element, they're really grounded. They're so reliable. Your kapha friend is the one that's going to make plans and follow through to a T. They're the ones that are always going to answer your call and support you. They're the nurturers, right? That water element. They're also really emotional. They may cry really easily. Things touch their heart so much and so deeply. They can feel a lot of emotions sometimes. Things, heavier emotions. So think like grief, depression, sadness, and this is of course when they're out of balance, when they're feeling like they have too much of that water element within them. Now, when a kapha is in balance, Kappas are grounded, they're reliable, and they're nurturing, and they're so loving. And I bet you can already think of one person in your life, maybe this is you, who is so nurturing and supportive. I know I could already think of my friend right now. She has the most beautiful curved body ever. She is such a goddess. And she also tends to get sick very easily, and when she does get sick, she always has like nasal congestion or allergies, and she's such a giver. She is truly the friend that everybody calls on when they need help with something, and she loves to cook and to host. That is very much that Kappa nature, just loving to take that caretaker, that motherly, maternal role. So Kappa. So this is just to get the spark going, so you can start to understand these doshas. We're going to go into them way, way deeper. Now let's talk about the Pitta Dosha. So Pitta Dosha is fire and a little bit of water. So let's think of the qualities, the fire element. It's sharp, it's hot, it's transformative, it's clear. And that water element, it gives a little bit more of that flow, a little bit more of those emotions to it. So let's talk about when a Pitta is out of balance. When there's too much of that fire element, what can happen is they are sharp-tongued. They are quick-witted, and sometimes that can be more like sarcasm, being judgmental, critical, easily frustrated, anger. Having a lot of these fiery emotions, of course, can be an out of balance for Pittas. And I also just want to note here that just because you have these emotions doesn't mean it's a bad thing at all. It's actually such a great thing that you can bring awareness to them, because that is exactly how we transform them. So please always allow yourself to feel these emotions. Again, we'll be going into this a lot in our work together. All these emotions are super important for us to heal. So we got that judgmental, anger, critical, and how does this represent the physical structure of a Pitta? So Pittas, they have a very muscular structure. They tend to have very proportionate bodies. So their upper body and their legs, they'll all be even proportioned. Pittas, physiologically, when they're out of balance, when there's too much of the fire element, burning, indigestion. Really any type of burning in the body is related to a Pitta imbalance. And this is largely related to inflammation. So I know that's a very generic term for a lot of us who are familiar with Western medicine, because inflammation has to do with pretty much every chronic condition. And that is something just to put in your back pocket and think about, because that comes from the Pitta nature. So often when a Pitta is out of balance, they're working in overdrive. They take on way too much, and they do get a certain sense of joy from their work, so it's hard for them to detach. But when they are doing way too much, they tend to burn out. They tend to have that fire element to them. So they can have inflammation in the body. They can have burning indigestion. Some will have looser stools, maybe diarrhea, constantly going to the bathroom. They can also have things like styes in the eye. Pitta lives in the seat of the eye. That is because that is where light comes through. We're able to transform the photons into actually seeing their visual presentation in front of us. And that is the Pitta quality. So when you're talking to a Pitta, you can even hear it in their speech. They're very clear, and they're cut, and they're sharp, and they're distinct with their words. And I just want to go back, because I know I didn't mention this for Kappas. So Kappas have that kind of slower speech. They're very nurturing, they're very sweet, but they talk a little bit slower and grounded. Okay, just had to put that in there. Now, back to Pittas. When Pittas are in balance, they are able to really welcome that water element in a sweet way. So yes, they are goal-oriented, they are motivated, they are focused, they have that fire laser-cut vision. However, it's in harmony. They have self-care rituals. They practice loving kindness to themselves and are able to detach from being self-critical of everything that they do. And they're actually have this really heart-centered intention. So Pittas are known for being leaders. And when they are in that leadership role, they serve from that heart-centered mission. And they're actually very loving. Pittas get this bad rap of just being critical and burnt out, and that's when they're out of balance. When they're in balance, they really are so heart-centered and are able to hold their vision at the same exact time. Okay, now we have Vatas. Vatas are air and ether. So air and ether, it's light, it's dry, it's mobile, and it's quick. How does this manifest in a physical body? So in a physical body, this can manifest as a very light frame, having really thin bone structure. These are your type of friends that it seems like they can't gain any weight ever, no matter how much they eat, because their body just naturally is really light and doesn't hold on to weight. Physiologically, in Vatas, that dryness is going to be bloating, gas, constipation. It's because they don't have that moist element to really have a smooth elimination. There's a lot of dryness in the body. Can also relate to dry skin. Vata is also any imbalance with the nervous system. It's going to usually be Vata related. So emotions like anxiety and emotions like worry and overwhelm and not being focused, feeling all over the place, feeling like every day you're just constantly ruled by your schedule. You don't know which way the wind's going to go. That is the Vata element. Or should I say, that is the Vata Dosha. So when Vata's out of balance, they can feel overwhelmed. They can forget to eat. They can feel like they're just running on edge and their mind is in a million different places. Now, when Vatas are in alignment with their soul, they're very creative beings. They are artistic. They are able to express themselves in so many different ways. And they have amazing elimination and digestion. And they're actually organized and structured. They're able to ground that Vata energy and actually see their visions come through. That is when Vata is in her highest expression. So that was a lot. Those are all the doshas. I want you just to pause this video for a second and take the time to journal on one person in your life that you know that totally exemplifies one of each of these doshas. So find yourself a Kapha, a Pitta, and a Vata friend. That is the best way we can really start to understand these doshas and how they live in each other's bodies. Okay, so now let's get into the details because I'm sure some questions are popping up. The most misconception in Ayurveda is understanding the difference between the constitution and your current imbalance. So our constitution, it is who we are. It is very much related to our astrology, our natal birth chart. It is just who we are innately as humans. Some of us may be those Vata, really creative types. Other of us can be those Pittas, the motivated, soulpreneur, leaders types. And then some of us can be the Kaphas, more of the nurturers, the caretakers, the loving and reliable friends, and that support team. We all take on different roles. So although we can be predominant in one of them, we could also be dual dosha. So I could be primarily Kapha and Pitta. So you're maybe listening to this and thinking, yeah, I'm a nurturer, but I'm really motivated too. Like I kind of get everything done on my list and I, tend to have burnout a lot. That's a Kapha and a Pitta. A Kapha and a Vata, you tend to be that, maybe you're that creative type, but you're also that nurturing and that loving friend. And then maybe if you're Pitta and a Vata, you're definitely that creative type, but you also love to put it into action. Like you have an idea and you constantly put it together. Those are just some small examples just to get the juices flowing of how these dual doshas work. So that could be your constitution. That's who you are. It's who you've related to no matter what phase of life you were in. From the time you were born, you were a kid, to teenage, to now. It is all feels familiar. It's important to know what your constitution is so you can have compassion and really own who you are. Especially when we start to talk about authenticity in our third module, it's important that we know who we are. Now, the current imbalance is a snapshot of where your doshas are in this moment. So for example, let's say by nature, I'm a Vata. I am creative, I'm artistic, I like to express myself. However, right now in this moment, I have a Pitta imbalance. I have a chronic condition I'm trying to heal. I have a lot of inflammation in my body. I run very, very hot. Got a lot of that excess heat in my body. Maybe it's showing up as acne, kind of redness. That is a Pitta current imbalance. So how we would label that is your constitution is Vata, but your current imbalance is Pitta. And what's important now to understand is when we're healing, all you need to know is your current imbalance. What dosha is currently out of balance for you? You may feel like, oh my gosh, I'm out of balance with all the doshas. It's common. First, we start with the root dosha that's out of balance, which if I haven't already, I will help you find. And that is what we're primarily working on right now, is finding your current root imbalance. You may already have those inklings like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm feeling more of that heaviness, or I'm feeling more of the fiery element, or I'm feeling more of that light and dry and scatterbrain nature to myself. I urge you and always strongly encourage you to trust your intuition, right? That is what we teach here at the Divine Feminine Healers Academy, is to find your divine feminine essence, which means trusting your intuition first. Golden over everything. Okay, let's put this all together. So I first want you to write down what your constitution is. Then I want you to write down what your current imbalance is. Once you have that down, let's get into the law of opposites. So this is how we heal. We're putting it all together, this beautiful intuitive template. So let's say you have a Kapha current imbalance. You've been feeling more heavy, sluggishness, maybe slow bowel movements, having more mucus, maybe some weight gain, feeling tired, lethargic, depressed, stubborn, any amount of this as an imbalance. So we know that Kapha dosha is made up of earth and water, that heaviness and stickiness. Well, what do? Let's say you had a heavy meal. Let's say it's the day after Thanksgiving. What does your body crave? Maybe something that's more light. Maybe something like salad. Maybe your body craves movement, getting things to be light and fiery again. So it's only natural that you incorporate those elements, the opposite elements of earth and water, which are fire, air, and ether. So again, think of that intuitive example. If you feel heavy after a meal, lots of potatoes, lots of dense, sweet foods, you're gonna wanna bring in light vegetables, green vegetables to start to clear that extra heaviness that you're feeling in your body. This can also relate to having movement, working up a sweat, that's the fire element. Movement is the air element, maybe going for a dance class, something creative and inspiring. And if you have a Kapha dosha imbalance, I want you to pause and just brainstorm. Intuitively, what are some things that I want to cultivate? Has your body been saying, I need more greens in my diet? Has your body been saying, I actually want to start a walking routine where I walk a certain amount of time every day? Listen to that within you. Now let's talk about a Pitta dosha imbalance. So if you have a Pitta dosha imbalance, you primarily have too much of the fire element within you. So Pitta dosha works a little bit different than Kapha and Vata. So when we have too much of the fire element, it burns away everything. So what we need to do is we need to stabilize that fire. Think of like a campfire that's just gotten out of control. We need something to stabilize it and we need something to tame it. We don't want to put out the fire, but we definitely don't want it to grow any larger. So the elements that are going to balance Pitta to stabilize it is the earth element. That's what brings stability in our lives. And then what is going to calm the fire down is going to be the water element. So we're bringing in the opposite elements. The only difference here is why we wouldn't bring in air and ether. Because think about it. If you were to put more wind on fire or ether, it would just make it go crazy. It would go out of control. So we want to tame it, stabilize it, and calm it down. So the earth and the water element, what does that actually mean? Grounding rituals, connecting to nature, as I mentioned earlier in this video, but also having more structure in your days. If you notice that you feel like your schedule is just all over the place, if you have too much to-dos on your list, it's going to be really helpful for you to focus on just 3 driving action steps that you can take each day and leaving the rest for later. Another way to ground down is by having a grounding yoga class, something that's slow and methodical so that you're not moving really fast, but that you're really feeling the earth underneath your hands and your feet. So if you have a Pitta dosha imbalance, these are just some things to trigger your intuition. I want you to listen within and start to understand intuitively what your body has already been showing you. Has it been wanting to cool down, to maybe do less intense workouts, maybe to go for a midday break in your workday so that you have a more calm mind? And finally, for our Vata dosha, so you have too much of the air and ether element, that dryness, that quick and mobility. We balance it with bringing the earth and the water element to it and the fire element. So the earth element helps to ground your body. The water element brings that nourishment and that moisture in your body to get things moving again. And that fire element warms you up because we know Vatas, you are cold all day, every day. So what does this look like in real life? Connecting with the earth element, the same as Pittas, bringing more structure to your day. Also grounding rituals. Think of even really relaxing things like a yoga nidra practice is also relates, or I should say synonymous with the word yoga sleep. It's more of a meditative yoga practice. Yin yoga is really calming, relaxing for the body. That water element, it could be something like taking a bath. It can also be incorporating water-inducing foods into your diet, like lettuce that has a lot of water element to it, root vegetables like carrots and sweet potatoes. And the fire element can be that heat in the body. So you might actually really love a hot yoga class, Vatas, or just getting an infrared sauna can be really great for you. Okay, again, those are just some things to get your juices flowing. We're gonna go way deeper, especially into diets. If you're like, I wanna know more about what I should eat, I know, we'll get there, I promise. This is just to get the intuitive juices flowing so you understand. I'm gonna guide us through just a really brief meditation right now, just to close out so that you have a really clear plan of what element you wanna connect with and how you can start to be balancing your dosha. So if you wanna get into a comfortable seat, ground down the bottoms of your feet. Rest your palms onto your thighs and close your eyes. And just feel the earth underneath your feet. Take a deep inhale. And an open mouth exhale. And just continue with your breath. Dropping your breath low into your lower belly. So feeling your breath expand there. And a deep exhale. One more on your own. Now touch a part of your body that you'd like to understand more or you feel like is sending you a message. And ask your body, what does it feel like? What is this feeling that is present right now? Now notice if your body feels an excess or a deficiency in any of the elements. Ask your body, what element is in either excess or deficiency here? And just tune into the sensation. What does this feel like? It may be familiar, it may be something you may have suppressed or ignored, but you're paying attention to it now. And now ask your body, how can I heal this imbalance? You may be shown a visual. You may feel a change, a temperature. You just may know something that comes to mind. This could be diet, this could be a lifestyle practice, a spiritual practice. Allow what is ever meant to come through. And visualize yourself completing this ritual. Connecting deeper with this element, bringing it into your life. Noticing how that makes you feel. And take a deep inhale. And an open mouth exhale. When you feel ready, come back into this space. I want you to write down any insights that came through from your intuition. And if you felt like you didn't get messages and it was hard for you to understand, don't worry. We are going to be strengthening your intuition through every module so you get to strengthen that voice within. It is there, I promise. Sometimes we just have to sift through and get clear anything that is excess or bring more nourishment to really bring out that voice within. Okay, I'm excited to go way deeper into the elements and the qualities and this intuitive template. For now, just simply observe, connect with nature, connect with the elements, get to know them on a personal level, and we'll dive way deeper into this.